Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast, brought to you by Drumforge. Drumforge is a forward-thinking developer of audio tools and software for musicians and producers alike, founded on the idea that great drum sounds should be obtainable for everyone. We focus on your originality. Drumforge, it's your sound. And now your hosts, Joey Sturgis, Joel Wanasek, and EYAL Levy.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Joey Sturgis Forum Podcast.
Hello.
And how you doing?
Not bad.
Great today.
Yeah.
Today we have a cool guest, Sterling Winfield. Is that how you say that?
That's how you say it. And wow, I'm cool. Tell my wife.
Cool. Cool. And the more I read about you, the cooler you get, actually.
Oh, hell, thanks, man.
Because Sterling has worked on a bunch of stuff that I grew up listening to. Like, I didn't realize you had worked on that Mercyful Fate stuff from way back when, but, like, that was some of my formative stuff.
Right on.
Yeah, they were the first metal show I ever went to.
Awesome.
Yeah, so, like, you're partly responsible.
Hey, man, I've corrupted many a youth of America.
Also, in these credits here, Pantera, Hellyeah.
Yeah, that's my shit, dude. Pantera, fuck yes.
Pantera, I think Pantera, we can safely say, is everybody's shit.
That's the top of the marquee for me, man, honestly. You know, the good
Damage
stuff.
Plan as well, which is awesome.
Yep.
Hellyeah, and King Diamond as well, which is very cool.
Yeah, the Mercyful Fate stuff kind of bled over into King Diamond and ended up doing a couple things with him as well.
And you're in Texas, and I know that he's not American, but he lives in Texas, right?
Yeah, he lives right up the road here from me, probably about 20 minutes.
Where's he from? Is he from Denmark?
He's from Denmark. Yeah, he's from Copenhagen.
How did he end up in Texas? That seems like a strange...
He married a girl from here. They got hitched, and it was right after I became an assistant engineer, intern kind of guy over at the studio that he came by to check out, which was Dallas Sound Lab at the time. Probably the best studio here, one of the better studios in the Southwest. And he came by to tour the studio a couple of times and just said he was moving here and he was looking for a place to record, and it went from there.
Was that your first studio gig?
Yeah, that was my first real gig as being, you know... nobody was on staff, so to speak. We were all freelancers, but you could have called us on staff. We just weren't getting benefits, you know. Mm. So yeah, it was my first studio gig ever. It was back in 1991, October of 91 when I got on there, and you know, piddled around there for a few years, and then I met Pantera in October of 93, and the rest is history.
You want to know what I was doing in 1991?
You were probably in, like, grade school.
Yeah, nothing cool.
I was listening to metal.
All right.
Like 6th or 7th grade around that time, so not much cool.
That's about when I got corrupted. My older brother corrupted me, so, you know, we can thank him.
So, like, how did you literally land that as your first gig? Like,
it wasn't my first gig ever there. I mean, my first gig ever there was making coffee, you know. Okay. It was like, can I intern here? And they go, yeah, there's the coffee maker. We like, you know. and so, I mean, that was literally it. You know, there's the trash can, there's the coffee maker, there's the copy machine. Be quiet, you know. That was the gig.
I love that. That's
How did you even land that one?
I had done a little apprenticeship type thing. There were no real formal audio schools at that point in time here in the Dallas area. I had moved up here from a small West Texas city called San Angelo, where I was pretty much born and raised, and moved out of there when I was 18, couldn't get out of there fast enough, and just wanted to come seek my fame and fortune here, and you know, hated college. It wasn't for me. I was making good grades, but it just wasn't for me, and me and my dad sat down, and I got the music bug from him. He's a singer-songwriter guy for my whole life, so music was always a big part of my life, and he just asked me, what do you want to really do? And I said, I want to do something in music, and I was piddling around with a guitar, messing around with it, and knew that I didn't want to be a musician for a living because I saw what that took out of my dad. and how hard that was. And he said, well, shit, you're always messing around with tinkering with gadgets and your amp and stuff. Why don't you be a recording engineer? And it was like a light bulb went off. It had never occurred to me. And it was just one of those defining moments of your life. And so he hooked me up with a local guy, a local legend named Phil York, who did Willie Nelson's Red-Headed Stranger album. He worked with Robert Duvall on the Tender Mercies soundtrack. Wow. Really a really good guy. He had passed away a couple of years ago, but he was so nice and so cool. I mean, he would send in ballots, Grammy nomination ballots for local level unsigned musicians that had never done anything just to boost their confidence. He was that kind of guy.
Oh, wow.
And, whenever I get into a situation where I'm conflicted, I always think, oh my God, what would he do? And try to help me through it. But I went and apprenticed with him for about 6 months. And then he said, here, I got a local blues band that needs a live sound engineer. Here you go, and threw me in the deep end of the pool. And I quickly found out that I did not like live sound, and that I always wanted to be a studio guy. And so I messed with that for a few years, and then a couple of years, and then I actually got the balls to go to Dallas Sound Lab and ask for an internship.
Yeah, I don't like live sound either. I had to do it one time, and I was like, man, I really appreciate the rewind button. That's all.
Exactly. A do-over for sure.
Man, I hate it too. I got put on the spot once when I just went to watch a friend's band, and he just cornered me. It was like, we're not touring with the sound guy. Run sound for us. It's
no.
Well, I don't really do this.
Well, I got lucky, and I did it for a couple of years, and I got pretty damn good at it, but I never liked it. I never liked the spontaneity of it or anything, and it's an acquired skill for sure, and I have much respect to my live sound brethren out there. I know a lot of the top sound engineers, and they're superheroes in my eyes.
It takes a different mentality and temperament, I think.
Totally. It takes it's like part, you got to have that part sound guy thing where you're laid back, you work well with people, but you also got to have a real good size fuck you attitude as well, because when people get up in your shit and on the road, I spent tons of time on the road. I toured the world with Pantera and Damage Plan and Hellyeah as well as a bass tech and a guitar tech. And yeah, man, people, you gotta stand up for yourself on the road, or you'll get rolled over. So definitely
a strong to survive kind of situation.
Definitely, that's where I kind of grew a pair, so to speak. Was I was this timid little woodland creature when the Pantera boys found me, sorta.
So how did they find you?
Well, I mean, they came to Dallas Sound Lab to finish up Far Beyond Driven in October of 93. I had answered a phone call from Terry Date there at the studio, and he wanted to know what kind of gear we had, knew we had an SSL, and I rattled off the gear list, and he booked, however long that first those sessions where it was like the first 2 months. He booked like 2 months to finish up the album, to finish recording and mix it there, and
just like that.
Yeah, just like that. And it was another one of those defining moments in your life. And me and every one of those dudes just hit it off. We were almost the same age. I was like a year younger than all the rest of them. Just hit it off. I had always been a fan, even through their glam metal days. I'd worn out several of their earlier cassettes from when living in my hometown and going to school there, and they were always the band to go check out if you were in Dallas. It was Pantera, and I didn't really ever get to meet them or do anything with them until that time, until 93. And then they needed a bass tech after we were done with the album. I was assistant engineer on the album. The second engineer behind Terry Date was a guy that I absolutely love to death. He's one of my mentors. His name is Tim Kimsey. He's since gone on to win Grammy, and he's head of a studio out in Cisco, Texas. That's like a $10 million facility.
Yes.
And, just they needed a bass tech, and I would have been an idiot to say no.
I mean, what is the other answer besides yes?
There isn't one. There really isn't one. And I was just talking to my wife a while ago before we fired up here, and I was like, I was talking about how much I respect what you guys are doing and how many things that I see that you have your hands in, and it's incredible to me to see how busy you guys are. And I'm 46 now, and I could not do what you guys do. I could not be that busy without there being some kind of consequence, whether it be exhaustion or a mental institution or whatever. and I got to tell you, man, I respect seeing what you guys got your fingers in, and it's awesome to me. And so, and she was like, well, it's a different kind of you got a different kind of ambition or whatever. And I said, yeah, when I was their age, it was all about, hey, let's go get fucked up and hang out with rock stars around the world. That's where I was at. Because literally I hung up being a recording engineer for a couple of years while I went on tour and did silly stuff,
Yeah, but I kind of feel like well, first of all, you're working, but also I kind of feel like that's one of those will only happen once in the history of Earth type
without
of
a doubt
situations.
The stories alone are worth it.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And yeah, I have my little moments of remorse when I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to lock a machine up to Pro Tools, or I'm sitting here going, what the fuck is dither? And there were things I missed out on during the birth of digital, and I'm sinking my teeth back into it nowadays. But yeah, there's times when I'm just like, I have no idea what some of you younger guys are talking about. But I try to get in there and get my hands dirty and everything. But the stories and the friendships and the brotherhood and family that came out of all of this, I would never trade for anything.
You should see one of us try to run a tape machine.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I was like, did you working in that time period? You obviously came from an analog point of view in a tape world. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting to me because I don't know anything about that world, and I'm like, I've always been 100% in the box, and I know Joel's a little bit of a hybrid and has some outboard gear. Same with EYAL, but it's really cool to know that metal did have a period where it was done like organically, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no undo, man. Flying by the seat of your pants. You had to know your shit to do it.
Yeah.
And even then, if you didn't know your shit, you had a badass engineer to bail you out. And there are times when I long for those days and I miss the smell of tape oxide in the control room. But when I'm sitting here and I'm working with Pro Tools and there's no rewind time, there's no editing with a razor blade.
God.
I sit here and I smile and I go, yeah, I like this better. This is a little more convenient. Maybe we can make a
plug-in that smells like tape oxide.
That would be awesome.
Shoots out of the portholes of the monitors.
There you go.
Hell yeah.
Well, clearly everybody knows that the Pantera dudes are fantastic musicians, but so are the Mercyful Fate guys. So did working with those caliber of players in the studio spoil you at all?
Totally. Absolutely. Well, see, when your first studio gig ever almost straight out of audio, if you want to call it audio school, loose definition of that, straight out of that apprenticeship, going to the best studio in town, and you walk in the door, and within your first week there, you've got people like the Smothers Brothers walking up and down the hall, and Troy Aikman from the Dallas Cowboys, and Milton Berle's in town to do a voiceover, and this was a corporate studio as well during the day, so they're doing corporate shit during the day, and then the rock and rollers come in at night, and you're working with either guys like that, and if you're doing a jingle during the day, you're working with the best on-call musicians in town, first call musicians, back when there used to be a thing called studio musicians, and they would come in and knock out 10 Decker hot dog commercial versions of something in about an hour and a half, and then you get real spoiled. And some of the first call musicians are guys like Andy Timmons, and you're just sitting there, and you become so jaded to what the rest of the recording world is doing. You know, they're struggling through Billy Bob and the Dingalings down the street here, and they can't play their instruments, and they don't know what a tuner is. And yeah, this was a really, really professional environment, a really professional world-class studio. And so, yeah.
Did you ever record David Harbour on bass?
I know David. Yeah.
I had him up in my studio a few years ago to do a guest bass thing on a bass solo album, and man, he was super fun to hang out with. And
he's great.
He's most ridiculous bass player. I was just like, holy shit.
Have you ever seen him play piano?
Yeah, he's insane.
Insane. And yeah, I mean, he's a cool, laid back cat to go just hang out and have a beer with. I don't drink anymore. The Pantera boys ruined me, but you know, he was always cool when he would come over and do sessions with a local guitar phenom here named Michael Harris. And
I used to be a Shrapnel listener.
There you go.
Shred guitar nerd.
Yep,
Michael
exactly.
Harris, absolutely.
Yeah. I used to live in a little, not a little city, but a city just south of where I live now called Louisville, and we lived like a mile from each other. And this guy's a world-class guitar player, and he just lives right up the street. It's funny. Small world. I did a lot of stuff with Michael, too, over the last 20 years.
So I was wondering if I feel like there is, but I kind of want to hear your take on it. Like, do you feel like there's a big difference in the bar for how good musicians are now versus like what they think is good versus what was considered good in the Pantera days?
I think good's a relative term, honestly. I think that it's still there. I think the bar is still there. I think people are still reaching it and exceeding it. Now, on the other hand, all this digital stuff has made a lot of other musicians lazy as fuck.
Yep.
Agreed.
And not worth a shit, and they can't play what they write, and they're lazy, and I just hate that. I hate that mentality of, oh, well, you got a Pro Tools rig in front of you, don't you? That I hate, and I will fucking kick somebody out of my studio for that shit.
Hell yeah.
So
love
awesome.
it.
Yeah, you're my hero. Well, you know, I agree with you. There's definitely still great players. I just think it's the shitty players have such a voice now.
Oh, yeah, they're everywhere.
Maybe that's the difference.
I think so. I really do. And then there's social media on top of everything else where everybody can be a rock star or everybody can be shitty and bring mediocre way up closer to where the actual bar is.
Yeah, it's funny that you said about a profession that doesn't exist anymore, the studio musician game. Man, I remember when I went to music school, I went to music school in like 99 or 98, 99, and that was like a viable profession for a guitar player. Like people went to school for 4 years to study guitar in hopes of becoming a studio musician.
Yeah, GIT. I remember the big GIT thing in the 90s.
No more. That's a bad idea now.
Yeah, you can't make a living just doing that. You have to be in, if you want to be a musician for hire for a living, you have to be in several bands. You have to have your own website. You have to have, you got to have your tentacles out there and everything in order just to scrape by, You
guys just ruined 17-year-old me's dreams.
He'll get over it, man.
He did.
There you go.
So let's talk a little bit about Far Beyond Driven, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you clearly bonded with the band because they asked you to go on the road, but I think that's a pretty legendary record. You said that Terry Date booked 2 months just to finish it up?
Yeah, they were most of the way through the recording process at their dad's place in Nashville, Jerry Abbott.
By the way, my uncle lived down the street from that guy during that time period, and he said that he could hear that kick drum every night. So they were blasting it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big 24s, 2 of them. 24 by 24s, but yeah, they were right in the middle of that, and then they decided they need a change of address. I don't think they were getting along with their dad real well at that point in time, and so they uprooted from Nashville there and came back down to home to finish it. And we were one of the only rooms in town with an SSL that would tolerate them being there for that long.
What was left to do? I'm just wondering, because 2 months now is like a lot of time.
Well, make 3 albums in that time.
Think about it like this. Here's what was left to do. All the vocals were left to do. They had a couple of bass punch-ins and some add-ons there with like some Moog Taurus pedals. They had few rhythm guitar add-ons and punch-ins to do with Dime, and pretty much all of the leads, any clean guitar stuff. That was the very first thing that was recorded at Dallas Sound Lab, was the clean guitar on Shedding Skin. I remember it vividly. And then the mix. So
what the hell mic do you use on Phil and Selm, though?
At 58.
No kidding.
No kidding. 58 in the control room. Yeah.
That's what you're going to get live.
58 in the control room with Yamaha NS10s on 11, and him just screaming his balls off. And that's how they did it on Vulgar and Far Beyond and Trendkill.
It's kind of amazing to me that a lot of dudes that are contemporaries to Phil also recorded their vocals like that. 58 in the room, monitors blaring, and there's some of the vocals that we all
Black Album.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Testament did it too.
Yep.
A lot of people did it. I think even U2 did it.
Right. Yeah, that was a big Daniel Lanois thing, to have a PA in the room and just have everything open, right?
Yeah, he's insane. I've watched a lot of his recording videos. Insane in a good way.
Yeah.
A total genius.
Totally.
You can phase cancel it somehow, right?
I think if you're off axis is how it works. If you're off axis from the monitors, because if you're just standing directly in front of them, it's going to bleed like a son of a bitch. But if you're like off to the side or a 45-degree angle, you got to find a sweet spot or a dead spot in the room, and that's where you do it.
Yeah, that's how they did it with Bob Rock and Black Album.
I remember seeing that, but I think they used a large diaphragm condenser on Hetfield's voice, because they had like it was like a triangle setup. I'd have to go back and watch the video, but
I swear it's an SM7B, but
it might be.
Oh no, but they used a 58. Pantera used a 58.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a dynamic
dynamic setup.
The 7B was the newer album, one where they shot like the Saint Anger or whatever the fuck that album was. That was the one they used a 50 or a 7B on. But the Black Album was like a condenser or something like that, if I remember correctly. I watched that video like 20 times when I started.
I think I've seen that video more than any movie I've ever seen.
Right? That's what I look at when I'm watching studio videos or like clips of stuff like that. I'm like looking at the gear, I'm looking at how the mics were placed. Oh yeah, I'm a geek.
Yeah, that's okay. I think we all are. But I guarantee you that Hetfield used a 58 at some point. I know that I read that.
And he had to have.
Yeah, and it got ingrained in my head.
Yeah.
I haven't heard about that being done too much recently, but I think that there's something to be said, though, about how good these vocalists were.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt, a lot of control. What a lot of people and a lot of these guys don't understand in bands that are coming up and bands that are... I make a lot of my living from local level unsigned bands, and they don't understand that even though you're screaming, there's pitch involved, and there's tonality, and there's control, and I get a lot of these newbies that come in and they blow their voice out after 5 minutes, and it's sad. It's sad to watch.
I've totally seen that.
Yeah. I saw a kid that couldn't even make it through the first part of a song, and that was it. He was done.
Yeah, they go extra hard in the studio thinking it's going to be so much more awesome, and it's like, moron, you have to scream the whole record, and you've gotten through 2 lines, and you're already out for the next 2.5 months. Like,
That's it.
Come on.
Nah, it's, those guys are fantastic, and again, going back to the age of analog, the age of you better know your shit, you better have some control over your craft, because you're under the microscope and nuance counts. So
what was the stuff that you guys would spend the most time on? Would it be takes, or because they were so good you would have more time to experiment with tone? Like what was the big, I guess, time eater?
I don't know, man. Phil was pretty quick usually. He would come in, even from when I saw him working with Terry all the way up to where I got to sit and help co-produce vocals with Dime on Reinventing the Steel. He was very quick. He had everything mapped out, all ready to go. It was all in his head. Never saw him with a notebook other than just his lyrics sheet, his handwritten lyrics, and he had it all mapped out. Hey, I'm coming in, I'm going to do my, there's going to be a double here, there's going to be a harmony here, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was that quick, and he would knock out a vocal for a song in about an hour, hour and a half. and it was all done and mapped out in his head, period. And then Vinny or Dime might say, hey, can you do something here? Can you do a little something extra here? And they go, oh, yeah. And they'd just pop in and do it. And, that was pretty easy peasy. But a lot of time on the Pantera stuff was eaten up with guitars just because Dime was so meticulous. He was aware, very hyper aware of the fact that he's the only guitar player in this band, and everything had to be asshole tight, and rhythm guitars were a big deal for him. He would sit for hours. I would sit with him for goddamn 12, 14 hours sometimes just to get a track right.
So what did you guys mic up that cab with, man? Because Pantera has one of the most legendary identifiable tones. You might love it, you might hate it. I've never been a fan, but I've always respected how unique it is. Only Dime sounded like Dime, and I always wondered, what kind of shit was actually used on those records.
Here we go. You're gonna shit when I tell you.
57, right?
A 58.
Damn it.
A 58. We tried 57s, and it was always a 58 with Dime, and it was never a 2 mic setup or a 2 cabinet or multi this, multi that. It was Dime's hands, Dime's rig, and a 58.
That's great.
That is a testament to the fact of, whenever I talk to people that ask me, what do you do for this? What do you do for that? I tell them it all starts with the source, and that is a case of the source being impeccable, and the source, being the musician, of course.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with gear. It has nothing to do with anything other than the musician, and that is one of the clearest examples of that happening, because when I tell people it was just a 58, and a lot of times it was just going into an old MCI 500 console preamp, which he preferred. It was part of his tone that he liked. It's an old console from the 70s that a lot of country artists use, and that was it. That was the only particulars of his sound outside of his guitar rig that he insisted upon. And it's just one of those things that people are just, I'll tell people and they're just like, fuck you, come on, you're hiding something. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
They want to believe that you can purchase.
Yes.
You can purchase your way into something legendary.
No, you cannot. And that's a huge deal with me too. You cannot. It's not about gear. If you were ever down in the studio, the Pantera studio where they did everything from Trendkill on, you would shit, because it's nothing special. It's a fucking Mackie console. It's cheap ass Behringer composers that you can buy now for $30 on eBay. It's not the gear, it's how you use it. It's not the size of your pencil, it's how you sign your name. It's just that's where I learned all that. I learned the most valuable lesson from them was, you better eat something or you're going to be really hungover. and it's not the gear, it's the people,
Absolutely. Did he quad his rhythms, or
no? Just two.
Just two,
and they were surgical tight, man. And that's what we spent most of our time doing. Was, yes, we spent a lot of time with Vinny crafting his sound. He had a very specific sound as well, a sound just as unique as Dime's guitar playing and guitar tone. And so we would spend a lot of time getting the drums right, and we would spend a lot of that time getting the guitars tight and getting them right. And then leads were always pretty fun with him because it was such a unique thing, because he would always come in with some crazy idea or have you chain together like 15 guitar pedals, and it would make this god-awful horrendous noise, but he would make it work for the song, you know?
Would that be like the same rig, or would you guys set up something different for leads?
Most of the time it would start there. That would be where it would start, and then maybe he would have us plug into like a mini Marshall or something weird, you know, but it wasn't always just that rig, just that dime bolt guitar and just that setup. It was never, when it came to leads, it was like he loved to experiment. He always had something up his sleeve. He always had some new gadget or something.
Did those tend to go quickly once you got everything hooked up?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, there was no defined, I have an idea and it's going to work. It was, let's try this. Let's take a toke off a joint. Let's do a few shots and let's see if this fucking thing flies, you know? It was really up to the universe at that point, you know?
Yeah, one thing that I've always thought is really cool is that there's generally no rhythm guitars going under the leads. And, you know, with a lot of other bands, I would never like that because, I don't know, because their bass players aren't as good. But well, you know, like whatever it would drop out for the solo, it would just be bass and drums holding it down for most of the time. So I think that the bass tone, I mean, everything about it is legendary, but I feel like you can't forget the bass tone. Bass is such an important part of a metal mix.
Absolutely. And that, again, this comes back to the fact that Pantera, first and foremost, was a live band. They were the band that you heard their album and you either loved it or you hated it. And if you loved it, you wanted to go see them live, and then the live experience blew you away that much more. And that was, you know, that was the whole part of that, Dime being the only guitar player in the band. And, well, when that lead came up, most of the time, yeah, his rhythms would drop out because that's the natural flow of things live. And then Rex had to pick up where Dime left off and walk around down there, and the tone had to be big enough and badass enough to help keep it up, you know, to help keep the song energy moving forward and flowing so that you didn't feel like everything dropped away.
The days before backtrack.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's amazing to me. I went and saw a couple of the band headlining was not so new, but the band that was warming up for them was very new, and it was Pro Tool City. And I was just like, wow, I guess they don't even care if you know anymore. They don't give a shit. That's
like the standard now.
It is.
Backtrack everything, and it sucks.
Yeah, and I got another example of that is I got a friend who was our monitor engineer for a long time for Pantera for a few tours, and now he does sound for everybody. And he was having to do a show for Katy Perry on New Year's Eve, and he was telling me that she has this band of just unbelievable musicians. They're killer. And she was out front listening to how he was going to mix the show, and she kept telling him, it just sounds too live. Can you pull the band down and push the tracks up? And it eventually ended up being 3/4 tracks and 1/4 band. And it's just sad, dude. That's what they want to do, you know?
You know that Katy Perry had the best of the best musicians. Yeah.
Totally. So, you know, that's just where it is. Matter of fact.
So what was it like working with Terry Date? Because Terry Date has done so many records that I grew up listening to and is just an absolute legend.
Yeah. Honestly, I just can't say enough about the guy. He's, again, another one of those guys that I just was in awe of when he was on the other end of the phone. I was just blown away that I was talking to Terry Date because I was already a fan. And and I told him so too. Right there on the, I was like, oh wow, Terry Date, I'm a big fan. And he's super duper humble and laid back and was like, oh well, thanks. And yeah, I got the guys. I think we're coming back home and just want to see what you have in the studio. But that dude is, I can't explain it. He's just got ears of platinum and just knows what a mix should sound like. One of the most valuable things I learned from him was noise is your friend. Use it to your advantage. And if you have noise in a track or bleed or, you know, some noise that you think you're going to get rid of and clean up, don't use it. And you know, 90% of the time he's right. It works, you know, so.
Was he a taskmaster?
Meaning?
Like, very, I don't mean like in a mean way. I mean just like super demanding and very high standards.
I think when you're working with guys like Pantera, the standard is always high. Mm-hmm. When we were working, yeah, it was, no, that's not good enough. No, that doesn't have the energy. You know, there were a lot of do-overs. There were a lot of this isn't right yet. I remember when we started mixing Far Beyond Driven, we mixed on it for 2 solid weeks, and then we came back after the Christmas break, and Dime and Vinny were like, it's not right. And they were right. And so Terry went in there, and we pulled all the faders down and started over from scratch on the mix. You know, that has to happen sometimes. But as far as him being a taskmaster or anything like that, I don't think so, man. He's laid back and goes with the flow and keeps the train on the tracks. And, you know, that's always how I kind of viewed him, as more of a father figure of, come on, guys, we got to work on this instead of party, or we got to focus, or, you know, or I tried this out. What do you guys think? You know, I always looked at him like that, rather than, better get in here, the record label's breathing down my neck. You know, nothing ever like that I remember.
I can see that really ruining the vibe of the session.
Totally. So yeah, it was always an atmosphere of fun. It was always an atmosphere of, we were always cutting up about something, or they, you know, Dime was always picking on Terry, or you know, Terry was telling a story about whatever, working on the Soundgarden or whatever, you know, and just, it was. And then, yeah, we'd work for a little while, and then we'd drink a few shots, and it was always laid back. It was never, ever hardcore, we got to get this done, we have to have this done. It was never, ever like that. I don't ever remember it being like that.
Which is amazing, because in reality, it was on a major label. Yeah. And you did have to get it done.
I remember at one point for Trendkill, Dime was not happy with that outro part, that outro guitar part on, what song is that, Floods? Where he's doing the little do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, that part with the delay. And he just wasn't happy with it. And they were sitting in mastering at Sterling Sound in New York. And he was like, I have to redo this. I have to redo it right now. So he called down to Sam Ash and rented a little amp and a guitar and a delay pedal, and they set him off in one of the studios that wasn't being used, with some headphones and a little preamp and you know, to get it to DA88 tape or something like that they could sync up to the master. And he was sitting in there with a 6-pack of beer redoing this outro lead on Floods, and there was literally a record company guy standing in the doorway tapping on his fucking watch.
Jeez.
And Dom was just like, look, man, if I don't get this right now because you're standing there doing this, it ain't going to get done, and then you're going to get fired. Get the fuck out of here. So there you go. You know, that's just, no matter if the world was coming down around them, those dudes were always just cool as ice, man.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like a label would need them more than they would need a particular label, because it could have easily just gone anywhere.
Nailed it.
Yeah. That's leverage, you know?
Yeah, it was great that they got signed. It was great that their music got exposed to millions of people, but I feel like it would have happened anyways.
Yeah, I'm sure. So when did you stop touring?
I'd finally had enough on the Korn Family Values tour when Hellyeah was out on that a few years ago. On the Stampede tour.
Oh, so you've been touring for a while.
On and off since 94. And, you know, the drinking and the traveling and I had just got to where I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't fucking do it. I think I was done. And then even after I came home, I was still a little ways from my bottom, and I'd finally, after that, had enough of the drinking thing. And, you know, it just, there gets a point in your life where you either stop doing the things that keep dragging you down, or you croak. And so, made a decision to stop doing all that shit that made me miserable. And I got to tell you, I live a life now that's I never could have imagined 25 years ago. 25 years ago, it was all about going out and partying and doing, and working on albums and touring and all that. But now it's more like, work out of my home studio and hang out with my kid and be conscious and in the moment, hang out with my kid and my wife and actually pay attention to them and be around for things like that. And
that's hard in this business.
It is. It's a hard balance because there are trade-offs, there are sacrifices, and I see all the great things you guys are doing that I would, at this point in my life, would never have the time for. I just wouldn't have the time for it. And but the satisfaction in all that is, hey, I got my family that I love. I get to stay close to home. I only travel when I have to record something. Like I was just in Canada last year recording a very awesome band that they're about to release their debut album, and just that's the only time I travel anymore is when it's for that. Well,
I got 3 kids, and I think that
God Almighty, how do you do it?
I don't know. You just got to balance.
My mind.
And when you're with them, you have to be with them. You got to turn off the damn phone, and it's hard.
It's about balance. It really is, man. It's about balance. I watched that Rush thing, Beyond the Lighted Stage, and when Geddy Lee said there is time for both, it really resonated with me. And it's like, well, maybe that's where I'm at in my life too. And I think that's where I'm at. I think if I were on a nonstop schedule like I used to be on 25 years ago, I couldn't do it. I'd be divorced again and just estranged from my own kid, and it wouldn't be good. So that's just where I am now, though, and it's fucking awesome, man. I love it, but I wouldn't trade the past for nothing, man. Oh my God, what a roller coaster.
So it's interesting when you're just reached that point where you're like, okay, enough's enough, time to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, most definitely. And I knew it. I was in the middle of a tour, and I found a guy to replace me, and I was so over it. The conditions that we were touring under were not fun. It wasn't, 5-star hotels like it was with Pantera. It wasn't Pantera, and that's the realization that I hit. That's where I hit the wall. I was like, this is fucked. We're rolling cases through, 3 inches of mud, and we're barely fitting on the back of the stage with 10 other bands, and Korn's the headliner, and it was a clusterfuck every single fucking day in the rain, in the summer heat, and it was like, I'm 38 years old, fuck you. And that's just where my head was at.
Plus, you already did you probably toured just about the nicest anyone can tour.
Totally. Absolutely. The Pantera guys always wanted us to be where they were. It was a family, and we stayed in the nice hotels with them. We didn't fly first class or Learjets or anything like that, but we still got where we were going, and we all went together, and it was just fun, and it was family, and we were treated like kings, and it wasn't like that on Damage Plan. It wasn't like that on Hellyeah. That was the first time I quit, was the Damage Plan tour about 6 months before Dime got killed. And then I picked it back up again with Hellyeah, and then I just had enough of that, and that was it, man. That was over for me. So, but I know guys that are still touring. Guys from, Grady that used to be Dime's guitar tech. God, he still goes out with Blondie and Incubus. That's his 2 main bands right now, and he still does it. And he's got 3 kids and a wife, and
Some people just find their zen on the road.
They do.
So was it tough to transition to a more regular sedentary studio lifestyle after that huge ass party?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It took me, I've been sober now for 6 years, and I'm just now starting to hit my stride. And it was I had to quit everything. I had to quit the traveling and the drinking and whatever else I was doing. I had to quit, because it was wrecking everything, and I was watching a 20-year career go down the toilet. And so, yeah, it was tough, man, changing gears over the last 6 years, but I've come to find a little bit of serenity and a little bit of peace in the whole thing, and a lot of acceptance. And, you know, I have my tough days where I'm like, God damn it, I wish I was out there doing that again. And then I think for a second, no, you don't, you stupid idiot. You know, don't even go there. And it's, but yeah, it was tough getting settled in, and now I'm just, you know, I'm cruising along, you know, doing my own thing. So, and yeah, going from having the recording career that I had and then going out on tour destroys it every time, because, well, you're not available to go record anybody else while you're out on the road. And I had to turn down a gig with Rick Rubin because I was out with Hellyeah at one point on the first tour.
Ouch.
Yeah, big ouch. Or no, it was the second tour. And so, yeah, that was tough. And you just gotta roll with the punches, and then having to come back and reestablish your clientele, let people you know that you're not touring anymore. It takes a long time. It's like when you build a new studio and getting that established, that takes about 10 years. 5 to 10 years. And it's the same for when you're an engineer. If you leave it and you come back, you don't expect all that shit to be there, because it ain't. The show must go on.
Well, now, especially with the speed at which shit happens.
Oh, man. Lightning.
Yeah, you can't drop momentum at all.
Nope.
We've talked about this before, though, that nowadays, like, you will get dudes that get super, super successful, but there's a lot more limited of a time window for which that'll happen, because typically whatever trend they get successful in doesn't last that long anymore.
I could see that, sure. A lot of validity in that.
But I've noticed, I've heard the same thing from lots of touring guys that do studios, that it's hard to start back up when you get back from a tour.
Oh yeah, the transition is weird, because neither world is reality, and neither world it travels at the same speed, especially the studio. The studio is like watching paint dry. And when you're a touring musician and you go from everything happening at the speed of light to sitting there watching the grass grow, yeah, that's like hitting a wall. It can be, and a lot of guys, when they come off tour that I know I went through this, but you go through a bout of depression. It's weird. It's can't be helped sometimes.
Well, just making good choices after that.
Sure, absolutely. My niece told me that last night. I went over her house to get some medicine for my kid, and as I was leaving, you know, she's like 20 years old, she said, "Make good choices," and I just laughed. So, you know, too late for that kid.
So we've got some questions from our audience.
Absolutely, fire away.
But some of these we already kind of talked about, so don't want to get too repetitive here.
Okay.
So I'll avoid the ones that like we definitely already covered. But here's one from Dave Watkins. I would love Sterling's thoughts on achieving great bass tones like on Pantera records.
Well, again, here we go down the road of it starts with the source. And if you got a shitty player, you're going to have shitty everything, so tone don't matter. You got to have a good musician. A good musician makes everything better. It makes your job easier. It makes everything happen. It makes things tight. But outside of that, once you have that, then, you know, God, it's all about what the player's comfortable with. Myself, I love P basses. I just love the sound of them. It's not my favorite in the whole wide world, but they're right up there. P basses and Spectors. You know, a good instrument is a good thing. I don't know. I don't use cabinets much anymore or amps for bass. I just go direct, and I'll use a combination of maybe 2 different kinds of direct signals. Like I'll do a direct signal from a DI, like a radial DI, and then I'll do another direct signal that I'll plug like straight into the front instrument input of a Ventec preamp, and then I'll have 2 different DIs, and I don't know why it is, but they double up and they're arriving at different times, and so they get thick. And I like doing shit like that, and then maybe add on like a bass distortion pedal or something like that, and have 3 different DIs going at once. I've had a lot of success with that. So, and reamping and stuff, you know.
That's great. One of the things we always talk about, and it applies to a lot of different stuff, but mixing in particular, you know, it's like, get good with the basics. Get good with EQ and compression and actual and faders.
Damn straight.
Do that first before you worry about parallel compression and
Exactly.
and all this other stuff. So
yeah, there's no trick to it. I don't think. A lot of the shit that I do is so simple. It is so simple, and I think I guess that I maybe should throw that in there before anything else. You're talking about basics, and yeah, learn your rudimentary basic things, but keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, because the creative people are the worst about complicating something overly so. You know, I can complicate a ham sandwich if you let me.
I feel like the thing with like, for instance, that bass tone we're talking about is you take Rex out of the situation and you put like an average bass player in, and then you might need to complicate it just to get it to sound decent.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm amen to that. You might have to throw some bells and whistles in there to get it to kind of come back around the corner. No, I've had that happen. I agree with that.
So Eric Zan asks, did King Diamond ever wear corpse paint while tracking vocals?
Hell yes, I hope.
Oh my God. It's funny. We used to joke around about, dude, you should mow your lawn over here in Frisco in Texas like that. He said, I do live right across the street from a preacher. And you know, he's got a great sense of humor. He's a really funny guy, and just one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And we always used to joke about that. And no, he never came in and sang in full makeup. That's only a show thing. So sorry to smash your dreams, man.
I always wonder that about the black metal bands. I really like to do a black metal record with, like, you know, they come in with shields and corpse paint and all that shit.
I've had that happen.
I just would be so disappointed.
Now those guys are serious. Those guys are like, hey, this ain't a show. They live that shit.
Yes, they do, especially in Europe.
Oh yeah, when I remember Vinny telling me this was one of the tours of Pantera. I didn't tour constantly with them. I was on and off over the years, but one of the times I wasn't with them, they toured with I believe it was Celtic Frost or something like that. I think.
Yep.
Oh shit! And now we're talking.
And I think that was the band, and the drummer's name was Frost. Is that right?
Isn't that's Satyricon?
Satyricon. Yeah. And I'm not a death metal guy, so I don't know much about the subgenre. But Vinny always used to call the dude Frosty, and he would say, my name is not Frosty, it is Frost. And he was really serious about it. And they used to just catch a nut on the dude totally. And he just took everything so serious and never cracked a smile. And like they were in Spain, and they were at a beach, and it was like 90 degrees outside. And this dude was out on the beach with his fucking arm gauntlets on and everything, and it was just I don't get it.
You gotta be grim on the beach.
You gotta, I guess. So you know, that's one of the stories from the road. But yeah, man, just those guys are serious. But no, King, when he came in to sing, it was a real simple setup. He usually liked this. At least back when I was working with him, he liked this Audio Technica 4050 mic. It really complemented his voice. Everything I'd ever did with him was on that mic, and he would sit out there. Back when he smoked, he would sit out there with a couple of packs of those Prince cigarettes from Denmark that he had imported from Denmark, and a whole buttload of Fisherman's Friends cough drops and a pot of coffee. And he would sit out there and sing until his throat would bleed sometimes.
Wow.
And here's another cool story about King Diamond. This happened to me twice when I was tracking vocals with him on 2 different albums. We did Voodoo and Dead Again back to back. We did King Diamond, Voodoo, then Mercyful Fate back to back with no break. And during the tracking of vocals on both albums, at one time, he was doubling a vocal, and he sang it so perfectly that it was out of phase with itself, and it canceled itself.
Holy shit.
This happened twice. That's how precise that dude was.
Jesus.
In the studio. Still is. Still
Wow.
is. But it would go away and in the middle of the phrase, and you'd be like, what the fuck happened? And you thought like there was something wrong with the console or something, and so you'd solo it up. No, it's there. And then you'd solo up the double, and no, it's there. And you'd solo them up together. They would cancel.
I had that happen to me once in my entire career. It was only on one word, and it was like a scream or something like that. And I remember that specifically, and it is the trippiest thing ever.
Yep, and this happened twice with him. That's how precise that dude always was and how much of a perfectionist he is, which is a good thing.
I've had something similar happen twice with DIs.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, where they go to mono when it's just so tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man.
But that wasn't not from editing. Like, the first time it happened was the dude from Arsis, which is one of the best guitar players I've ever worked with. He was so tight that the riff went to mono at one point for like a few notes, and the same thing happened. It was like solo the right, solo left. What the fuck's going on?
Wow.
And you notice that they're exactly the same.
That is killer.
Yeah. It happens.
Twilight Zone shit.
Yeah, totally. So here's one that we got to ask, even though we kind of talked about it earlier, but like it just needs to be asked. Is Phil is asking, Phil Piscota, saying, how sick was it getting to track Dimebag?
Dude, it was amazing. It was always a lot of times goosebumps, you know, more of those working with that dude than almost anybody else. And just he was amazing, and he would sit when he was tracking rhythms, you know, I would sit off to the side, and he would, you know, kind of he would police his own playing and produce his own rhythms, and we would be punching in 1-2 note pieces where it was just a little bit off, and he would tighten it up, and, you know, almost to the point of going to mono. Like you were talking about, and it was badass, man. The dude was amazing. His instrument and him were one when he was jamming like that, and when he was in the zone, and it was just I don't know. There's not many other things I could say about it other than it was fucking sick, man. It's great.
Of course.
Something you just said is interesting. We've talked about it a few times already on the podcast, but like this is like a great example, which is that sometimes the best thing a producer engineer can do is know when to get the fuck out of the way.
Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you guys, that's my style. I all the way, because I'm not a control freak. I'm not a guy that comes in and says, okay, here's how we're gonna do shit. I can't stand that, and I know guys like that, and it bugs me to see a band's identity basically yanked out from under them because the producer wants to get his take on the album rather than theirs. And that's one of my biggest things with bands. When I go to work with them, I say, when we get done with this album, I don't want you to put it on and hear me. I want you to hear you. I want the people to hear what you sound like. And I want to be as transparent as the glass between you and me when we're in the studio, and that's it.
I think that you really need to work with great bands to be able to hold true to that. I feel like, at least, you know, the problem that I've had with that at times, even though I agree with it 100%, is that sometimes you get bands that don't want to find their own sound. They want somebody else's sound, or they're not good enough to have their own sound.
Oh yeah, I run into that a lot too, and that's where, for me, at least anyways, there's still a definable line of doing something with somebody and doing something for somebody. And sometimes the sad part is you just have to do it for them and have to show them, literally hold their hand and show them, hey, this is how you do this, and this is how we're going to get through the next 8 hours with each other without killing each other, you know? And you know, and yeah, some people don't have an identity, and you gotta coax them into it, or you gotta something out of them that they didn't even know they had. And that's one of the things I love about this job, is showing people shit they had no idea was inside them. And that's priceless to me. That's worth more than anything, because I've done that so many times, just getting to work with somebody and go, well, what if you tried this? And they did it, and they were like, holy cow, I didn't even know I could do that. And that's awesome. I love that shit.
You know, I can say from a musician's perspective, because I've been on the musician side of it. I've gotten to work with a couple really great producers, and that's totally real, that a great producer will pull stuff out of you that you didn't know you were capable of, or that you wouldn't be able to pull out of yourself. That's totally real.
Yeah. No, it's a great thing, and I tell people all the time, again, this goes back to the gear thing, and people asking, what kind of console do you use? What kind of mic do you use? What version of Pro Tools you running? And I'm like, none of that shit matters. And honestly, if you don't have good people skills and you can't talk to somebody and you can't get to know them, fucking hang it up. Walk away, because this job is not for you, because 95% of this job is mental. It's about relating to people. It's about being prepared when you walk into a studio. It's about getting over whatever your hang-ups are and leaving them outside the studio, and your dirty laundry or your baggage or whatever you're pulling in there with you. Fucking leave it outside and talk to people, open up, get to know them, you know? That's where I learned. That's how I learned everything, was by watching people. When they told me there's the coffee maker, there's the trash can, sit down and be quiet and watch, you know?
Well, if people don't like hanging out with you, they're certainly not going to sign on for spending 8 to 14 hours a day every day with you.
No shit. And you're going to burn out. Both of you are going to burn out real quick, and you're all going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it in the music.
So one thing that we always ask our guests, but that I'd like to ask you is, you had one piece of advice or just something, what would you say to engineers that are just now trying to come up and get into the game? Like, what would be a piece of advice that you would extend to them?
Well, it used to be get a lawyer. That was my number one advice, because I'm not big on the business, and I don't know the business like a lot of guys do. And that was one of my fatal mistakes in the beginning was, I never had anybody in my corner legally to explain the business part to me. And I lost out on a lot of good shit. I got ripped off. We've all got stories like that, but nowadays it's just educate yourself, man. There's so many tools at your disposal. Yeah, the internet's great. I'm watching YouTube videos all the time on how to mix things and what people do differently than I do, and try to get out of my comfort zone and just learn the business, learn what's going on, learn digital marketing, learn internet, That's the key to all of this shit. If you want to succeed in the business part of it and be able to pay your bills, learn the business. Or all of this you'll be doing in a very, very poor fashion,
We encourage people to take the business side of it as seriously as the music side of it.
Absolutely. And I didn't for so long. I was so busy partying, I didn't care. I didn't give a shit that I was getting ripped off on things and, whatever. But yeah, absolutely. It's a balanced thing too.
That's kind of why I like being in business with Joey and Joel. You guys are your priorities are in the right place.
They only embezzle a little.
I just want to party, if that helps. There's no time for it, but someday.
Man, I hear you. It's good to find good people too. You have to.
Yeah, I had the fortune of being surrounded by people who are worth lots and lots of money, telling me what to do, and Craig Erickson for one, and he just sold his record label for $20 million. So,
hey, good for him.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your advice, and I just want to say, it's been a blast to have you on here, and thanks for sharing your stories. Hope to have you back sometime.
Oh,
for sure.
I would love to do it, man. Like I said, man, I watch what you guys are doing in the social media and some of the things that you're connected with, and I see how you do things and stuff. Again, I don't know that I'd have the time or energy for it now, but it's really intriguing to watch guys like yourselves, and you're actually changing the game. You're part of watching. You're part of what I like to look at as like a, I don't know, just a transitioning or
The next generation of audio.
Yeah, next generation metamorphosis.
Next generation's coming up, whether we like it or not.
Exactly. Like, and Dime always used to say, "Roll with it or get rolled over." And I'm gonna roll with it. I like what you guys are doing, and
Thanks.
you guys are actually, like Joey, you make plugins. I have a couple of them, and they're fucking awesome. And
Thank you.
EYAL, you have your drum package, and
Thanks.
that's great, man. That's killer that you're doing stuff like that, and you have to stay in that front edge of things, or you're gonna get rolled over. And so, good for y'all, man. I'm honored to that you guys asked me to come be on this thing. So thank you.
We're honored to have you on here.
Well, thanks so much, Sterling. It was an awesome conversation and super interesting, and really a trip for me down nostalgia road, just remembering all of the great things that I came up listening to, and hearing the stories behind them is pretty awesome.
You're welcome, man. Anytime. And yeah, you guys want to have me back, I'd be thrilled.
Awesome.
The Unstoppable Recording Machine podcast is brought to you by Drumforge. Drumforge is a forward-thinking developer of audio tools and software for musicians and producers alike, founded on the idea that great drum sound should be obtainable for everyone. We focus on your originality. Drumforge, it's your sound. Go to drumforge.com for more info. To ask us questions, make suggestions, and interact, visit nailthemix.com/podcast and subscribe today.